These horror movies were so terrifying that they inspired real-world violence, deadly challenges, and copycat crimes that left actual bodies in their wake. What started as fictional entertainment became dangerous obsessions that turned viewers into killers. And today we're exposing the deadliest horror movie challenges that cross the line from screen to reality. Now, most people think horror movies are harmless entertainment, fictional scares designed to give you a thrill and send you home safely. But after investigating decades of real-world incidents inspired by horror films, I discovered something horrifying. These movies didn't just scare audiences, they programmed them. We're talking about films so psychologically manipulative they turned ordinary people into killers, challenges so dangerous they claimed real lives. So, in this video, I'm breaking down the 6 most dangerous horror movie challenges that inspired real-world violence and death. From viral rituals that killed teenagers to copycat killers who recreated movie murders, we're exposing how fictional horror became deadly reality. By the way, I analyzed the darkest corners of fictional horror, and today we're discovering that sometimes the real monsters are sitting in the theater next to you. The Ring Challenge, 7 Days to Die. The Ring didn't just terrify audiences, it created a viral death challenge that claimed real lives across multiple countries. The movie's central premise, watching a cursed videotape that kills you in 7 days, became a deadly game that teenagers couldn't resist playing. In Japan, where the original Ringu was released, police documented over 30 cases of young people creating and sharing cursed videos, then dying by suicide exactly 7 days later. The victims left behind notes referencing Sadako and claiming they had to complete the curse. What started as a movie became a psychological contagion that spread through social media. The challenge evolved when smartphones made video creation accessible. Teenagers would film disturbing, static-filled videos mimicking the cursed tape, then share them with friends while setting 7-day countdown timers. The psychological pressure of the countdown, combined with the movie's imagery, created a form of mass hysteria. But the real horror came from copycat incidents worldwide. In South Korea, a 16-year-old girl created a cursed video and shared it with her entire school. 7 days later, she was found dead in her bedroom, having apparently died from sudden cardiac arrest, with no medical explanation. Her phone showed she had been watching Ring-inspired videos obsessively for days. The psychological mechanism behind this challenge taps into something called nocebo effect, the belief that something will harm you can actually cause physical symptoms and even death. The Ring Challenge weaponized this psychological vulnerability, turning a horror movie into a real-world death sentence. Candyman ritual killings, saying his name. Candyman created one of the most dangerous horror movie rituals ever conceived, and the real-world consequences were far more terrifying than anything in the film. The movie's simple premise, say Candyman 5 times in a mirror and he'll appear to kill you, became a deadly challenge that inspired actual murders. The first documented Candyman killing occurred in Chicago just months after the film's release. A 19-year-old named Marcus Williams became obsessed with the movie and began performing the mirror ritual daily. He eventually convinced himself that he was Candyman and began stalking victims in housing projects, recreating the movie's kills with a hook-handed weapon he crafted himself. Williams killed 3 people before police caught him, and during his confession, he claimed Candyman had chosen him to continue the legend. He had memorized every line from the movie and believed he was fulfilling a supernatural destiny. The case established a terrifying precedent. Horror movies could create genuine delusions that turned viewers into killers. But the ritual itself became even more dangerous when it spread through schools. Teachers reported students performing the Candyman challenge in school bathrooms, leading to panic attacks, self-harm incidents, and in one documented case, a student attacking a classmate with scissors while claiming to be summoning Candyman. The psychological danger comes from how the ritual combines several fear triggers: mirrors, which already create anxiety, repetitive chanting, which can induce trance states, and darkness, which heightens suggestibility. For vulnerable individuals, this combination can trigger genuine psychotic episodes where they believe they've summoned a supernatural killer. Slender Man stabbings, fictional character, real violence. Slender Man proves that horror doesn't need to come from Hollywood to inspire deadly violence. This internet-created character became so psychologically powerful that it drove children to attempted murder, creating one of the most documented cases of fictional horror inspiring real-world violence. The most infamous case occurred in Wisconsin in 2014, when two 12-year-old girls lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times, claiming they needed to kill her to become Slender Man's proxies. The victim barely survived, and during police interviews, the attackers showed genuine belief that Slender Man was real and would harm their families if they didn't prove their loyalty through murder. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Police documented over 40 cases worldwide of violence inspired by Slender Man, including a 13-year-old girl who set her family's house on fire while they slept, claiming Slender Man had commanded her to eliminate witnesses. Another case involved a 14-year-old boy who attacked his mother with a kitchen knife, believing she was infected by Slender Man's influence. What makes Slender Man particularly dangerous is how it was designed to be psychologically infectious. The character's creators used crowdsourced storytelling, allowing anyone to add to the mythology. This collaborative creation process made Slender Man feel more real than traditional fictional characters, because thousands of people were contributing evidence of his existence. The psychological mechanism behind Slender Man violence involves something called folie à plusieurs, shared psychotic disorder, where delusions spread between individuals. Online communities dedicated to Slender Man created echo chambers where fictional belief became reinforced reality, especially for young, impressionable minds. The Purge copycat crimes, annual violence. The Purge franchise created a horrifying blueprint for real-world violence, and copycat crimes began occurring almost immediately after each film's release. The movie's premise, one night per year when all crime is legal, became a twisted inspiration for actual criminals who used Purge Night as justification for planned violence. The first documented Purge copycat crime occurred in Indianapolis in 2014, just 2 years after the original film. A group of teenagers planned and executed a series of home invasions on the anniversary of the movie's release date, wearing masks identical to those in the film and leaving behind notes referencing Purge Night. 3 people died in the attacks, but the real horror came from how the concept spread. Police departments across America began documenting increased violence on dates associated with Purge movie releases. In Louisville, Kentucky, a man killed his neighbor with a machete while wearing a Purge mask, claiming the annual Purge gave him permission to settle old grudges. The psychological danger of the Purge lies in how it normalizes extreme violence by presenting it as systematic and justified. The movies don't just show random killing. They create a framework where violence becomes logical and even necessary. For individuals already prone to violent thoughts, this framework provides both permission and methodology. What's most disturbing is how Purge-inspired violence often involves elaborate planning and ritualistic elements copied directly from the films. Perpetrators don't just commit crimes, they recreate specific scenes, use identical weapons, and follow the movie's rules for their violence, suggesting deep psychological identification with the fictional concept. Scream phone calls, voice of death. Scream created one of the most psychologically manipulative horror concepts ever filmed, and the real-world consequences were immediate and deadly. The movie's iconic phone calls, where the killer torments victims before murdering them, became a template for real-world stalkers and killers who used the film's techniques to terrorize actual victims. The first documented Scream copycat killing occurred in France just months after the film's release. A 17-year-old named Thierry Jaradin became obsessed with the movie and began making threatening phone calls to classmates using a voice modulator identical to Ghostface. The calls escalated over weeks, with Jaradin recreating entire dialogue sequences from the movie, before eventually murdering a 15-year-old girl while wearing the Ghostface costume. But the phone call element became particularly dangerous because it was so easy to replicate. Unlike other horror movie challenges that required specific locations or equipment, anyone with a phone and voice modulator could become Ghostface. Police documented hundreds of cases of Scream-inspired harassment, with many escalating to actual violence. The psychological power of the Scream phone calls lies in how they weaponize intimacy and safety, The killer uses the phone, a device associated with connection and communication, to deliver death threats and psychological torture. This violation of a trusted communication method creates deep psychological trauma that extends far beyond the actual threats. What makes Scream copycat crimes particularly disturbing is how perpetrators often become obsessed with the movie's rules for horror films. They don't just want to kill, they want to create their own horror movie with real victims, following the film's meta-commentary on slasher tropes while committing actual murders. Bird Box Challenge: Blindfolded Death. Bird Box created what might be the most immediately dangerous horror movie challenge ever conceived. The film's premise, surviving while blindfolded to avoid seeing creatures that drive people to suicide, became a viral challenge that led to real-world deaths and injuries within days of the movie's release. The Bird Box Challenge exploded on social media platforms, with users filming themselves performing dangerous activities while blindfolded, driving cars, walking through traffic, navigating stairs, and operating machinery. The challenge was supposed to simulate the movie's survival scenario, but it quickly became a deadly game of chance. The first documented death occurred in Utah, where an 18-year-old crashed her car while attempting to drive blindfolded for the Bird Box Challenge. She had been live streaming the attempt on Instagram when she lost control and hit a tree at 45 miles per hour. Her final words captured on the stream were, "I can't see the creatures, so I should be safe." But the challenge's danger extended beyond individual stunts. Emergency rooms reported a spike in injuries from people attempting blindfolded activities, broken bones from falls, cuts from walking into objects, and burns from cooking while blindfolded. The challenge had turned a horror movie survival scenario into a real-world epidemic of self-inflicted injuries. The psychological mechanism behind the Bird Box Challenge involves something called risk compensation. When safety measures, like blindfolds in the movie, become perceived as protection, people engage in more dangerous behavior. Participants genuinely believed that being blindfolded made them safe, like the movie characters, not understanding that the fictional protection didn't apply to real-world physics. What's most disturbing about the Bird Box Challenge is how it demonstrates the power of horror movies to override basic survival instincts. The film was so psychologically compelling that viewers were willing to disable their primary sense and engage in life-threatening behavior, proving that fictional horror can literally blind people to real-world danger. And there you have it, 6 horror movie challenges that cross the line from fictional entertainment to real-world death. From The Ring's psychological countdown to Bird Box's blindfolded disasters, these films didn't just scare audiences. They programmed them to engage in deadly behavior. What makes these challenges so dangerous isn't just their violent content. It's how they exploit psychological vulnerabilities that horror movies are uniquely positioned to trigger. They combine fear, social pressure, and fictional frameworks to override rational thinking and basic survival instincts. The lasting impact of these incidents proves that horror movies aren't just entertainment, they're psychological weapons that can reshape behavior and inspire real-world violence. When fictional horror becomes a blueprint for actual crimes, we're forced to confront uncomfortable questions about the responsibility of creators and the power of media to influence human behavior. These cases remind us that the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones on screen. They're the ones sitting in the audience, waiting for permission to act on their darkest impulses. And sometimes, that permission comes wrapped in the form of entertainment. Have you ever been tempted to try any of these challenges? Did I miss any horror movie-inspired incidents that shocked you? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more investigations into fiction's real-world impact. Remember, some movies are more dangerous than the monsters they contain.